Today we're going to talk about how to carefully choose and use keywords for your B2B PPC campaigns. I really think the first step in picking the right keywords is to know your audience from the crowd. It's really easy on the internet to get traffic, but that traffic isn't necessarily always good traffic. And so you don't want to end up paying for clicks that are going to bring you an audience that's not relevant to what you're offering and might never lead to the conversion event that you want. So knowing your audience first is kind of the first step in knowing what they're going to search for. This is a great example here, I think, of a company that might cast too wide of a net. You can see in the example here, a B2B company, in the energy saving space, they offer products for large buildings to save on energy costs. The advertiser here might choose the keyword energy savings. They might think, that's a really good idea. That's the space I'm in, and that's the solution I'm offering. Well, the problem here is if you look on the right-hand side, there's a lot of queries there that'll come in on this keyword choice that don't actually indicate relevant search intent. They're sort of superficially related to that keyword, and if you get a lot of traffic from them, you're probably not getting the right kind of audience. So you don't want to cast too wide of a net. So once you know your audience and you're kind of in their mind and what they would search for, that'll make sure that net maybe isn't cast too wide. And then you can start to kind of get the keyword juices flowing, start to get the ideas out there. And you're going to do that by kind of looking at different sources. Number one, of course, your products and services are going to be your first stop here. What you call them as well as what your customers might call them, if that's any different. But your buyer personas as well that you've created, you've probably sketched out your customer goals, challenges, pain points, etc. Review that and see if there's any good keyword ideas in terms of the goals, challenges, problems they're having, stuff like that. And if you haven't created buyer personas yet, you definitely kind of want to take that step before you start thinking about keywords. Your content, what kind of content have you put out that's been really good with your customers? What kind of language do you use there? Again, what kind of problems are they going through and solutions? And what keywords do they use in those phrases? Surveys, voice of the customer is always a great resource. What kind of language do they use when they respond to surveys? They talk about your products and services. Do they like certain features, more than others? Or there's certain segments of the population that might use different keywords? So make sure you think about that. Competitors, of course, you're going to get ideas from competitors, right? Where are they advertising? How are your products similar and different? Can you target those in your keyword choices? And then finally, the buyer journey. Similar to buyer personas, at the beginning of their journey, when they're researching, their searches probably aren't going to be the same as at the end, right? They're going to be doing more informational research type queries. And so you want to make sure you go through the broad spectrum of what they might be searching for at the different steps. So once you kind of have all these ideas laid out there, you want to start organizing them because they're not always going to be prioritized the same. And you want to build around core phrases in terms of categories. So we know that some types of keywords are kind of closer to your desired conversion event than others, and probably you're going to have a higher ROI and be more valuable to you. So you can see here in this graphic, I thought it was a good visual representation of what we're talking about here of, the closer to the center that each of your keyword categories are, the more likely they're going to result in a desired conversion event. So you're going to prioritize them in that way. So at the center, your brand terms, and as you work your way out, you get all the way out to like audience terms that don't necessarily have to do with your products and services, but if they search for those keywords that they're in your audience. So it might be something related or something like that. So you can classify your keywords this way to help you prioritize later on. So once you do that, you kind of have all these ideas laid out of what your audience might be searching for. You want to start building around your core phrases. So if I'm offering devices for large buildings here to save on energy costs, You remember from the slide before, energy savings was kind of a core term, but it was giving me a lot of irrelevant traffic. So what I'm going to do here is basically build around it to make those more relevant. So you can see the extra columns I've added here with keywords like platform and software, that if a searcher attaches these qualifiers on, it signals more intent, right? Someone looking for energy savings is not necessarily in my audience, but if they're looking for energy savings software, which I offer, then they're going to be a much more valuable searcher and have qualified themselves as being in my audience. So I built around my core phrases, and now I have longer phrases. Now I want to classify them, right, into 3 purchase intent types to make sure that I'm targeting them correctly. And these are kind of the traditional intent types that come with searching: navigational, informational, transactional. People are either navigating somewhere, they're looking for information sort of at the beginning of the research cycle, they have a question about something, that kind of thing, or they're looking at multiple vendors, things like that, or they're just looking for what the solutions should be to their problem. And then transactional, they might be ready to purchase. They might, be looking more into a specific company, that kind of thing. So there's going to be more transactional phrases. And you can see what I've done here with my sort of energy management, energy savings core terms. Kind of, segmented them out into informational and transactional to kind of give me a good sense of how I might target these. Obviously, the informational, I'm not going to try to offer my products and services to them because it's probably a really small percentage of people that are ready to sort of make a contact with me anyways. So basically, I do this because I want to give the audience what they're looking for, right? If they're looking for energy savings, I don't know that they're looking for software or solutions or platforms, so I want to give them probably really good information on how to save on energy costs. So once I've done that, I've organized, classified, I'm going to start choosing my priorities to go into my campaigns and where I'm going to spend my budget. So in B2B search marketing, the higher priorities, right, it's often the long tail that wags the dog, sort of those long phrases like energy management platform and software that give me more intent that I'm going to lead with my budget. And, when you're looking at these phrases, the question you want to ask yourself is, what's the percentage of the audience that's relevant to what I'm offering them, right? So on the keyword energy savings, you kind of got all these different audiences that are probably going into the funnel, and the ones that are spit out as being relevant to you, what percentage of that audience is relevant? And, you're not going to know the exact percentage, right? You're not going to be able to say 20% or anything like that. But you should have a good sense of, generally speaking, is a large percentage of people that would search on this relevant, or is it a small percentage? And so in this case, I think it would be a small percentage because you got a lot of consumers, a lot of homeowners probably looking for energy savings ideas. And so I'm probably going to prioritize that pretty low on my list. So you can see here, leading with the long tail, again, the transactional sort of longer phrases are going to be what I'm going to lead with when I prioritize, because I know that audience is looking for me, right? They've shown it in their query, in their intent, they're looking for me, so I'm going to prioritize that. So even though you do that, you don't necessarily want to forget about your lower priority keywords, the more informational keywords, because they're still going to contain your audience, and you're still going to want to take advantage of the opportunity to establish that connection with them. Because if you're at the top of the funnel and you sort of establish a connection with them, when they're ready to look for a platform or a software or solution, they might not even do that query because they've already gained trust in you through your other content. Since that's the case, you've already established that connection. So ultimately, you don't want to forget about these keywords. You just want to treat them differently, right? And I've got an example here of what you might do and how you might treat those informational queries differently. You can see on the left there, my informational queries. I might have lower bids, a less percentage of my budget, qualifying ad messaging, where in the ad messaging, I'm actually saying who should be interested in what I'm offering. I might say, well, for businesses or for buildings or, for schools or for hospitals. So I'm qualifying in my messaging so I don't get those clicks that are irrelevant. I don't get those, homeowners looking for energy savings ideas coming to my site and end up paying for those clicks. And then lastly, of course, offering content instead of contact. I want to offer, valuable information that'll kind of establish that initial connection. And of course, that's different from on the right, the transactional, your higher priority, can have higher bids, budget. Your ad messaging doesn't need to qualify because they've already qualified themselves in their query. And so you might have more benefit-laden messaging, and your call to action or your offer might be to contact you or even purchase in some instances. So now you've kind of got a great idea of how to choose keywords. Here's some additional tips for you to take with you. When it comes to search volume, just remember you're after the right people. Okay, there's a higher premium on the right clicks. So even though your volume is going to be lower, sort of on those long tail phrases, you can see here the reason that these cost more and the competition's higher is because of that intent, right? These are the right people searching for products and services, and so. Don't shy away from it just because it's higher competition, higher bid. Just do a really good job and compete well there because those are the people you're after. And they're likely B2B searchers, right? We don't want B2C. We don't want homeowners necessarily. And so, these queries, signal that intent that's the audience we want. And so when you kind of have these keywords that you prioritize, you want to line up your audiences and messaging with the keywords that people are searching for. So, different audiences will care about different things. For example, this audience of a building manager, it might be one of my audiences that I'm targeting. Building managers are going to look for building energy savings, right? They just care, they're holding a utility bill, it's high. They're wondering, how can I save more, money on my energy bills? And so my ad messaging really might focus on how my products save on energy costs as opposed to something else. And over here on the other audience might be a building engineer. This might be another person involved in the purchase process. And they might search for a keyword like building energy management platform. So they already know how they might save money. They figured out they need kind of one of these building energy management platforms, that they exist, that they're out there, and that they can integrate them. And so they already know the answer to the question, how do I save? They just need an answer to, what separates your solution from the competition? Who should I go with? What platform should I use? And so your ad messaging is going to focus on that. So special categories to cover. You want to make sure you cover all your bases when picking keywords, right? Remember to focus on, problems. These are more top of the funnel keywords. You'll be more successful offering content there as well. Acronyms. In my example, energy management systems are a really popular phrase in this space, but people also say EMS. So if your products or services have these acronyms, sometimes they can be even more popular than the actual name. So you want to make sure you utilize that. Applications and markets, segmenting by what application, right? So in my example, different types of buildings, hotels, schools, stuff like that. If I use those keywords, it's going to allow me to write ads directly related to those applications. And I'm going to get better results because if someone, searches for hotel energy management, then I'm going to be able to put hotel in my ad, and it's going to be more relevant to them. Part and model numbers. If this applies to you, people will put part and model numbers in their queries, so you should put it in your ads and in your keywords. Solutions. When searchers append words like solutions or vendor or company, they're looking, that transactional phrase, right? They're appending that to their core keyword terms. They're ready to buy probably. And so you want to prioritize those. And then competitors, right? Your competitor names, especially if they're bigger than you or much bigger than you, have a large market share. You want to separate those out into, their own campaigns and target those differently. Those can be a bit harder to make profitable, but you don't necessarily want to ignore them. And when you do this, make sure you pay attention to match types and know how they operate. In our early example with energy savings, if I was using broader phrase match, I would get a lot of those like irrelevant queries. And so there really is no bad match type. It's just you need to have a purpose in how you're using each one and how you treat them. So if I'm, targeting broad, like I said earlier, you might have lower bids, because the phrases might be a little less relevant. And finally, don't forget to exclude. You don't want to advertise where you're not wanted. So there's a lot of lists out there that you can find online if you just search for B2B PPC negative keywords. Stuff like jobs, if they look for, in my case, energy savings jobs or energy management jobs. I don't want to advertise on that because that's not really the audience I'm looking for. So make sure that you take advantage of those negative keywords so you don't spend any money on those as well. So there you go. There's your tips for how to choose and use keywords in your B2B PPC campaigns. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you need help with your campaigns, and have a great day.